I'm really excited for the next 15 minutes to be joined by Sharmadean Reid, MBE from Beauty Stack. Hello, Sharmadean.
Hi Nathan, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you doing?
Awesome.
I just want to kick things off, I guess, for context, people who might not be aware of Beauty Stack. Can you give a little bit of background to what you guys do and how that is disrupting the beauty industry?
So Beauty Stack is social media meets booking platform. So the idea came from the fact that I had a nail salon, War Nails, which was incredibly popular. We would get a lot of screenshots from people off our Instagram feed being like, how much is this? How long did it take? And I always thought, wouldn't it be cooler if you could literally click and book the picture? So rather than approach a booking marketplace in a directory fashion, which means a list of services, a list of providers, I was like, imagine if you use the network effects of recommendations, visuals, what your friends are having, what other people are booking to recommend you the best treatment for you.
No, and when you explain it like that, it makes complete sense. And I guess that the theme for this interview is empowering change. When did you have that spark in your mind that you thought, you know what, actually, I've spotted a problem here. I'm just going to take it upon myself to change this in the industry and do something like it's not been done before?
I think that I've always had within me a way of seeing how things could be different. So it might have been something really simple like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if the dining hall at school was laid out differently for communication? Or it might be like, wouldn't it be cool if there was a better way of organizing software and menu items? But then when I can see it different, I feel the urge to do it. I'm like, if I don't do it, who else will? So I think it's like, it's that thing for me personally, which I'd have this niggling feeling of being like, I have to do it because who else is going to do it?
That's right, and I think, as you say, often the best ideas are the ones that are kind of niggling away at you. What would you say has been the biggest or the most sort of unexpected challenge so far with Beauty Stack? Now you're sort of 3 years in, right?
Unexpected. The whole thing has been a challenge. No, unexpected. All the challenges I'm having at the moment are challenges that I knew I would be having, considering that I'm a non-technical, non-finance, non-software person building and running a technology in a software company. I knew it would be challenging. But what I didn't expect was how much my own inner personality, strength, my inner authenticity would be swayed by the industry around me. It can be very, very challenging working in a super fast-paced environment where there's always a hot new thing, where you always will have doubters and naysayers. I never expected how much that would affect me as part of the process of this journey.
Because I watched your TED talk, I think it was, where you talked about you learning how to use Photoshop and InDesign, because you were just like, I'm just going to do it myself. I'm not going to wait for someone else to do it for me, or I'm not going to wait for a graphic designer to try and get this right. It seems like you have quite a fearless approach to getting things done.
I think you would say fearless. I'd say naive. I think that it's almost like childlike naivety of not knowing what's risky, what's impossible, what might hurt you. That type of naivety is actually what's held me in good stead, because I kind of acted without knowing what the repercussions might be like or what failure might look like. So yeah, I definitely have a can-do attitude, but the more you know, the less you're inclined to do it.
And obviously, now you're growing a business, you've got lots of people working with you at Beauty Stack. How do you marry up, obviously, your own, I say fearlessness, you may say naivety, that own way of working, and how do you bring a whole team on a journey with you to think like that as well?
I think the most important skill an entrepreneur can develop if they don't have it innately is storytelling, because you have to tell this story, bring everybody on the journey with you, from your team, investors, the press, the public. So for me, the way I always do that is through storytelling and context. I think it's really important for you to be able to say, I've, my role as a CEO is to look at everything that's going on, take my experience, my intel, and figure out what the right direction for the company is. And that's, when you, rather than just tell someone, here's what we should be doing, giving them context, story, and I write a memo. I will always write a little memo if there's a direction we need to do. And that way, you help your team members understand the why, not just the what.
That's really interesting. And yeah, and how do you manage yourself against that why and the what? How do you strike a balance in your leadership between obviously being that spokesperson and that storyteller, and being that person who evidently wants to be doing the do and getting involved with so many things at the same time?
I think it's important as you progress in your career to change your methods to working smarter, not harder. So I definitely enjoy doing the doing, and I also love knowing how it's done, even if I don't do it myself. But I also understand the importance of hiring people better than you at the thing that they're going to be doing, and giving them the space and trust to get on and do it. I think as long as you've set the strategy and the vision for the change that you want to see in the world, and you hire the best team to execute on it, you shouldn't have to feel like you have to micromanage or dip in on everything being done. Another thing I do is I have my own personal vision, mission, principles. So for how I want to operate as a human, right? So if I feel a bit out of shape, like mentally or worn down, it tends to be because I'm operating against my personal principles. So then I have to realign with those and then bring them back into the company, into what I'm doing all of the on a daily basis,
Can you share those at all, or what is an example of one of your principles?
So a principle I have is around, let me think of one, focus, because my brain, I have real bad shiny new object syndrome. I will suddenly get curious about something and put all of my attention onto it. And if somebody asks me to do something, I will be like, yeah, sure, I'd love to do it. But because my vision is around gender equality and my mission is to use technology and media to advance gender equality, if I'm asked to do anything outside of that, I have to focus and say no. So it might be, for example, I believe we're going to advance gender equality through technology with the app, through media, with the content we make. But let's say someone asks me to do a teaching position, at a university. I'd have to say no, because education is not one of those things. It's technology and media. But in the next 5 years, it might be education and politics, or it might be literature and music. The mission changes, but the vision doesn't, right? The vision is, my life goal is to be instrumental in advancing gender equality. The mission by which I'm doing it is through technology, and the way I'm going to carry myself is with focus, authenticity, and they're like these 10 principles about how I'm going to operate.
That's so interesting. So like a really solid but a flexible framework that can adapt as things move forwards. I wanted to ask you a little bit then. You obviously, and as you've alluded to there about gender equality, you speak very passionately about being a female founder and the challenges which that entails. Can you speak a bit about why it's so important for you to be spreading that message and waving that flag?
I only like to talk about the things that I I know and understand, or rather the process by me understanding it is by sharing. So does that make sense? So by me teaching something, it's actually helping me process it myself. Or by me talking about something, I'm processing it and, you know, baking the knowledge in for myself. So it's a combination of like selfishness in that I want to understand it and I understand it by sharing it. But also, I think what is important for men and women to understand is that there might be policies, company policies, you know, legal in law that might seem that they're working towards gender equality, but there are all of these other things that are critical in figuring out why we have this gap, particularly in pay, right? The pay gap is the most like the important thing for me. So when you share your experience, you're helping illuminate um, those inconsistencies between what people think is happening with gender equality and what is actually happening. You know, so for example, it might be like, well, we founded 4 female companies this year, which is a 50% increase on last year. But if those female founders don't have equal networks, support, access to partners, access to quality talent, all the things around it, then the data around the funding is irrelevant. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think that it's important to like really, really scrape back from the surface level of what people pursue as equality or equal opportunity.
That's so interesting. So like you speaking about the challenges from a process of like you personally actually processing them and dealing with them and trying to understand them. I guess in a way that makes it your message quite relatable though. It makes it almost gives you more reach and more cut through because you're doing it in such a human way.
Yeah, but that reach and cut through isn't like the most important thing for me. As you can probably tell from the way I'm talking now, I can be very convoluted and overcomplicated. And I could say things a lot more snappily and simply if I wanted like millions of people to understand it or I wanted it to be viral. It's not about the reach because I don't need, like, putting something out there is enough for me. Putting something out there, and this is the challenge that I've got, like with me scaling a business, is I don't get a lot of validation from the feedback. I get the validation from the creation. So it's almost like I've just hired a marketing person. She'll be really excited about, oh my goodness, we got more users. We got like 50% growth this month. Da, da, da. Do you know what I mean? But that bit doesn't excite me as much. I'm like, wow, we made an app. Like, that's amazing. And the creation is sufficient for me.
Oh, that's really interesting. We're coming towards the end of the interview now. I wanted to ask you a bit of an open question from all of your experience, and I guess how you see the world of business and the lay of the land today. What advice would you give to a young person wanting to start their first business today?
If you want to start your first business today, nail the business model, because if you can successfully execute a business model, for example, franchising or subscriptions or membership, it doesn't matter what you sell, but the distribution and the business model has to be the key thing.
I think that makes complete sense. I guess we can get caught up these days with the world of startups and big raising big rounds of funding that a lot of the fundamentals of making a profit can often go by the wayside.
Exactly. Just how are you going to make money and how are you going to distribute it?
Sharmadean, I wish we could speak for so much longer. Maybe we'll get the chance to do that at some point. But to wrap up the interview today, I've just got to ask you for your 15-second summary. If you could give people just a 15-second thing to take away when it comes to empowerment or being a leader, what would that be?
My big takeaway is to constantly be learning and reflecting on your actions. It's essentially exist, reflect, improve.